Hello everybody, my name is Charlie and welcome back to a brand new episode of Doctor When. So, you may be aware that recently I published another video basically sort of doing a Doctor When Season 2 channel trailer. So basically, it's not going to be an exact channel reboot, but more of just sort of a new set of videos, sort of a fresh slate for the channel. So this had included a new video schedule, and that's still going ahead, yes. However, there was a week delay for a reason I'm not really going to say, because I don't really have that much time, but I can tell you from now it will be Tuesdays, Fridays and Sundays, with Tuesdays and Fridays having chapters of my fan series and Sundays having Classic Who or even New Who afterwards reviews. So basically, yes, I'm going to try to lean more heavily towards the fan series in an attempt to sort of, section off my channel as one sort of thing, rather than a more broad sort of niche, if that's what it's called. So yes, basically today I'm going to be doing the Horror of Skaro Chapter 4 of the second story in my fan series, and this is with the second Doctor and Jamie, and the cliffhanger at the end of the last chapter was, spoiler if you haven't seen it already, Ian Chesterton from an alternate universe had arrived and he was one of the people in the black masks. So yes, I really recommend watching the Horror of Skaro Chapter 1, 2 and 3 before watching this, because honestly it will make no sense at all. So it's time for the penultimate chapter of the Horror of Skaro. So this is the Horror of Skaro Chapter 2. 4. The Doctor walked over to the edge of the jet. The doors had been torn off and he could see a fire towards the back of the jet. Once he had finished putting on his parachute, he noticed the pilot next to him. "Well then, how do we do this?" the Doctor asked him, hoping him to reveal his identity. He removed his respirator slowly, and the Doctor's theory was correct, because the person that the Doctor was looking at was none other than Ian Chesterton. "Together, Doctor." The Doctor, all the while shocked that this mysterious person was in fact Ian, wasn't surprised at all. When he travelled with him, he was always courageous and brave. He turned their attention back towards the surroundings. He was still hundreds of meters in the air, but the Doctor was nearing the malevolent Dalek base. What horrors lurked beneath those rusty grey walls of the complex? As the ground got nearer and nearer towards him, Jamie deployed his parachute, and was thrown upward slightly as he did so. After a minute or two, he fell into the Pacific Ocean, its salty waters invading his mouth. The sea was freezing, even for a crisp November day. Thankfully, he could tread water, so he didn't drown. Once Jamie had landed in the water, the Doctor looked up, about 300 meters above himself, and Jamie, Ian, Zralos and Keldor was the ship they were just in, plummeting directly towards them. The five swam in all different directions quickly, and were submerged as the ship crashed and sent immense waves towards them. "We got shot at," Zralos announced. "Did we? I didn't notice," the Doctor chided sarcastically. "Oh, be quiet, Doctor, we just got shot at," Keldor chimed in. "And I'm not saying that jokingly. There could be a Dalek aiming at us right now." "Will you three please stop arguing? We just got shot at by a Dalek and now we're stuck below their fortress in the middle of the sea, with no way of escape," Jamie shouted, in an attempt to stop their arguing. Meanwhile, the Doctor was swimming over to a nearby pillar of metal, and swam around it. "No way of escape? There's a ladder right here. About 200 meters above us all. There's a door," the Doctor told them all. They quickly followed the Doctor, the freezing water causing them all to shiver. Grudgingly, Keldor climbed the rusty metal ladder, being careful not to slip and fall to his death. Following him was Zralos, then Ian, then the Doctor and his friend Jamie. After about 30 seconds of climbing, the Doctor began to interrogate this version of Ian. This would determine finally whether he was indeed in a parallel universe or not. If not, a serious timeline error would have occurred, and that would just be even more problems in this incredibly busy day. "Ian," the Doctor asked calmly, "why did you join the rebellion in the first place?" "Well, Doctor, the same reason as everyone, I suppose. It's a better alternative to being killed by a Dalek. We have weapons to defend ourselves, resources, supplies, and companionship in these dark times." "Okay," the Doctor muttered. This was going to be harder than he thought. "What day were you born on, Ian?" Ian looked puzzled as to why the Doctor was asking him these questions, but answered regardless. 26th of March 1933, he responded. A look of confirmation and approval flashed across the Doctor's face. Finally, the Doctor spoke. "Who is Barbara Wright? Do you know her?" "Not a clue who she is," Ian replied. Finally, after more silence from the team, and almost falling to their deaths, They finally emerged at the door. Kaldor, at the top, attempted to open it, but the cold, slippery handle didn't allow the door to open. "Doctor," Kaldor shouted down, "we're locked out." "It's okay, I have a plan," the doctor replied. "What might that be, Doctor?" Ian questioned, still increasingly worried for all of their lives. "I've got this thing, this device. It's called a sonic screwdriver and can unlock any door that isn't made of wood." "Why not wood?" Ian asked. "I've been asking myself that same question for 600 years, Ian. Anyway, I'm going to throw it up to you, Ian. You then throw it up to Zralos, who can throw it to Kaldor. He can then unlock the door by pressing the button on the top of the device." The doctor shouted up. Slowly but surely, the plan worked. The doctor threw it up to Ian without failure, but it took Ian a few tries to throw it to Zralos. Then it went wrong. Zralos gripped the bronze-coloured device tightly in a sweaty palm. Today had been a roller coaster, from receiving a Lantos transmission, to finding Kaldor with this doctor and Jamie, and now they were infiltrating the Dalek's head base. Just as she was about to throw the sonic screwdriver to Kaldor, however, something rose out of the water, a chill travelled down her spine, and a sense of dread overcame her. The doctor had only ever seen a waterproof Dalek once. It was a long time ago, in London, 1965, and that was a busy week too, coincidentally. He'd lost Susan, and then Ian, in fact, the Ian he knew, went into some sort of dream state. The Dalek was a deep shade of crimson, and had coppery roundels that glistened despite it being rainy and grey-skied. Within one split second, it screamed the one thing that anyone facing a Dalek would dread to hear. "Exterminate!" A blue beam of light exploded from the Dalek's blaster and hit the middle of Zralos's back. Her grip loosened on the metal rungs, and she fell into the ocean, as cold as a stone. "Zralos!" Kaldor shouted, tears emerging in the corner of his eyes. "We've got to go, Kaldor," Ian spoke, trying hard but ultimately failing to disguise a sadness and even anger in his voice. "Before the Dalek kills anyone else." All the while, Jamie looked at the scene in horror. Unfortunately, the boy had seen people die before, but had never seemed this personal. Zralos was a good person, and it was no secret that she liked Kaldor in some way. She didn't deserve to die, and definitely not at the hand of a Dalek. A wave of seething anger overcame Kaldor as he leapt off the freezing metal ladder and shot into the water, plunging below the surface. Resurfacing, he dived down again, and somehow managed to tear off the Dalek's own gun. "This is for Zralos," he spoke coldly. The gun fired, and the Dalek exploded in a shower of rubble and blue flames. The doctor looked on in surprise and impressment. Sorry, I don't really know if that's a word or not, never mind. In the universe he was used to, someone would have died falling into water from that height. Even the laws of physics are different here, he thought. Reluctantly, he, Jamie, and Ian jumped into the water once the Dalek was destroyed. "We're going to have to find another way in," Ian proclaimed. "Let's see if that door's open." He pointed to another door about 50 meters away. Miraculously, once they'd all swam over to the door, it was unlocked, and the four of them dropped inside. The doctor, Jamie, Kaldor, and Ian emerged in a black corridor. It was quite narrow, and only wide enough for a Dalek to fit, and the ceiling was quite low. Intricated gold patterns were engraved on the walls, and the doors were placed equal distances from each other. "Hope none of you are claustrophobic," Ian spoke jokingly, trying to lighten the mood. Ignoring Ian, Kaldor spoke coldly. "I need a weapon." He pushed open the nearest door, and, unfortunately, wasn't an armory at all. Instead, it was a colossal room, 50 times the size of a hangar. The floor was completely coated in Daleks, of every type and class, and weapon type. Above the army levitated a figure in obsidian spiky armour. "Hello, Doctor," the figure said, in a cold, menacing voice. "My name is the Shrouded One. We haven't met yet. I'm the Minister of War." So, to be continued. So that is the second to last chapter of the Horror of Skaro. They are now in the Dalek base, and yes, basically, they've just found a huge legion of Daleks, led by none other than the Minister of War, the sort of villain from the final chapter of Count Your Shadows, the person who put Ian in a dream state, and we finally find out why they're in the parallel universe, what's going on with the Daleks, and how will they escape. So, yes, to be continued. I hope you enjoyed that chapter, everybody. Feel free to comment down below, actually, what you would like to see in future videos, like which stories to review, and just other kind of videos in general, because I'm struggling to think of ideas, and I would, like to hear what your suggestions are. So yes, feel free to also leave feedback down in the comments about this chapter and Horror of Skaro so far, and yes, I hope you enjoyed. I will see you on Friday for the Horror of Skaro Chapter 5. Goodbye.